Hey guys, what's going on? We're back with another Mythic Plus dungeon. We're in Halls of Infusion. We're doing a Mythic Plus 11. The affixes are Afflicted and Bowstring, so not very fun affixes to deal with, but nonetheless, we go ahead and we slam this. Um, Partway through, I do get, well, closer to the end, I get distracted by a phone call, so I end up playing worse and worse, so this isn't my best performance, but yeah, anyways, hopefully you enjoy. But on a bigger note, Enhancement got a buff this week at the very start on Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on your region. Whenever you got the reset, we got a lot of buffs, which I think I mentioned in the last video. We got a lot of 10% to most of our AoE and a little bit of single target with Frost Shock and Flame Shock getting buffed. Chain Lightning got buffed, Primordial Wave got buffed in PvE only. Um, and then we got some Fire Nova buff and Crash Lightning buff. And basically, a lot of people have asked, is it noticeable? And it is very, very noticeable. The buffs are quite large. I was very surprised to see they were at a 10%, and I really like the way they went about it, focusing on mainly AoE cleave and adding just a little bit of single target, right? Not too much because our single target was already up there, but you know, they wanted to give us something, right? Um, but my only concern is that they buffed both Frost Shock and Fire Nova by 10%. Now, Fire Nova hasn't seen really any playtime this season, mainly due to the new tier set. Um, because it got some showtime in season 2, where we had the tier set for Sunder, where you gained Mastery, you gained fire damage and physical damage. That really buffed Fire Nova to be more powerful than Hailstorm in most scenarios, like Brackenhide Hollow, for instance. But seeing it not get any, real look at from the lack of playability it's had is quite concerning. Now, I haven't watched any of the high enhancement players play yet, so I don't know, or looked at their builds, so I don't know if they've ever attempted play Fire Nova at all. The only place I would think they would try it out is Brackenhide Hollow, and just because a lot of the bosses have some cleave in there where you can maximize Fire Nova, especially the first one. You can also do some quick bursts on Treemouth and a little bit on the Hyena guy. But overall, Fire Nova's in a bad spot, unfortunately, and that's due to its double cap. In my opinion, Fire Nova should be a lot stronger in an AoE scenario and a bit weaker in single target, whereas Hailstorm is vice versa, right? It does good in cleave, right? And it does very well in single target, but it should lack overall if you're doing bigger numbers than 6 targets or something like that. I don't know. But I'd really like to see them take a look at Fire Nova. Although, this upcoming week, I am going to try and get a Storm build tested out with Fire Nova in it to see if it is worth taking. It might not be, but I just want to try it out because Fire Nova is fun. And I mean, I'm playing a bit of Cataclysm, and Fire Nova does a lot of AoE damage, and it's great. But as for, retail, it's really not doing well at all. And it's quite a shame because when you think of Fire Nova, you think of mass AoE, not little puffs of AoE. I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to try that out because it's Flame Strike damage. It does both physical and fire type damage. So it'll scale a bit better with Storm maybe. With Frost Witch buff, but overall, oh, and it'll also be buffed by the Feral Spirits, so we'll have to test and see. But other than that, it's unfortunate. But yeah, I'm gonna try and get a Storm video out next week for that. So hopefully things go well. If not, then Fire Nova does not play, and I will talk about it in the next one. But anyways, just a quick thing. If you aren't following along with Warcraft, The War Within has been announced to drop on August 26th, which is super duper exciting. I can't wait for it. But there is another thing where if you have the Heroic Edition, you get it on the 22nd, I believe, which is 4 days earlier, but with limited access, I think. So like you can level and stuff, but I don't know if you can do like mythic dungeons or anything like that. So you just get a little bit of a head start on leveling and maybe get some alts maxed out as well. It's hard to say. Now, why they are doing this, I'm not sure. To me, it seems a bit odd, but I mean, they're gatekeeping some stuff, which is fine, I guess. If you could just go into mythic dungeons, I don't know. But it seems a little weird. I do have the Heroic Edition. I have been playing beta, which enhancement is looking good, but I won't go too deep into it because I know some people don't want any spoilers. But that enhancement is looking great, and I'm thinking I might do a dungeon video at some point on a random day, and you know, showcase, if you guys want to see it, how enhancements looking in dungeons and stuff like that once I get a damage meter working in there so that I can show it off. But yeah, um, the War Within announced 26th of August, which is great. That means you have roughly 2 months, 2.5 months maybe, to get whatever you want done, or maybe if you're not playing, you got 2.5 months to do whatever, and then War Within comes out and you can play that. So, enhancement is looking good for that. The hero talents are in a bit of a weird state, but I believe Blizzard is working on them. There hasn't been any true announcements yet, but I believe there are some things coming forth for enhancement. But as for current retail shaman, we got our buffs and we are looking definitely strong. As you can see, my damage is quite up there. But a few things are still amiss, right? Your mass AoE is not there. Crash Lightning is definitely popping off, especially when you get up into the more dense packs. I haven't tried it in Algathars yet. I don't know how we're doing in that one. I didn't do an Algathars this week. We kept getting back-to-back keys. For whatever reason, the game likes to send us to Uldaman, Azure Vault, and what's the other one there? Neltharis. I don't know why, but that's what the game wants to send us to, and it's really weird. I don't know if you guys have the same issue where you're getting like the same keys back to back to back, but it's really freaking annoying because I want to try out these other ones. But on another note, I am excuse me, I am gearing up a fire mage. So for the first time ever, I am going to try a meta class. And so far, I'm kind of enjoying it. It's a bit of a learning peak for me in the Mythic Plus stuff, because as I'm doing these like 8 keys on it, 8 to 10 keys, I'm noticing that the target is not living long enough for my ignite to go off. So it's definitely gonna be a learning curve and stuff like that, but it's definitely enjoyable. Although I still prefer my Enhancement Shaman, but playing something else is always more fun to me. Just getting a feel for other classes too is a lot of fun, and I enjoy learning about other things and knowing how they work, so that way I can work with them better in keys and stuff like that, right? But for enhancement specifically, we definitely have gone up. I haven't looked at Archon or anything like that to see where we stand. But overall, I think we've gained a huge buff. I think it's looking very, very good. Our utility is still amazing. So if you're worried about playing enhancement or not, our utility is great. Our cleave is awesome. I can't complain. I know a lot of people are very annoyed with the fact that we still have a 6 target cleave, and yeah, I mean, I get it. It would be nice to have something that's uncapped AoE. Well, technically we do with Alpha Dog, but we don't use that because of Elemental Spirits. That's only used in Storm. But To be honest, the only time you're doing like super massive pulls is typically with like, your rank one push stuff, right? Or you're doing like maybe 15s or 16s and you're pulling like a massive set of mobs. I haven't watched Elbro in a while, so I don't know how he's doing his pulls. But typically, if you're pugging into keys or doing, 10 to 13s maybe, you're typically not going to be over pulling too much. So you're going to have a solid target count to deal with. And now if the group does pull, like, yeah, you're not going to keep up with a Shadow Priest or a Warlock or a Fire Mage for the most part, unless, you can kill the target fast enough, or a BM Hunter for that matter. But overall, I think Enhancement is in a great spot. A lot of things are still in the works, right? We don't know how things are going to play out in the War Within yet, but for the current enhancement state, I think it's in a fairly good spot. But I am worried that if nothing changes, some things are going to go wrong in the next expansion. But I believe they are going to change. But anyways, it's kind of unfortunate that we have to deal with a 6-target cleave, but at the same time, I'd rather have heavy 6-target cleave than mediocre mass AoE, right? It's one of those things that you have to compromise with. I mean, Blizzard has designed this a very specific way where they want certain things, I guess. I'm not quite sure what they're aiming for, but I mean, we have the biggest bonus for enhancement is that even though we have 6-target cleave and it's very heavy and strict 6-target cleave, our single target versus cleave is very minor, right? We don't have to change too much just to gain extra damage in single target versus AoE like some classes do. I believe Beastmaster Hunters, they sacrifice a lot of 6-target or a lot of single target for AoE in Mythic Plus, so they tend to drop on bosses. As you can see, I'm kind of pumping, and even though there is some minor cleave here, it's not enough to allow the BM Hunter to explode with damage like there is in Algathars or something like that, right? So that's one of the big benefits of enhancement. We can switch from single target to AoE and not lose barely anything. We don't lose much at all. In fact, sometimes we gain a bit due to some minor cleaves popping in too. So those are things you have to keep in mind. Now, as for how Shadow Priest works, I don't know. They just seem to do maximum damage at all times, and I don't really get it, but they seem like they're very strong. But I think that's a more core issue with the other classes than it is with enhancement, right? I think that these classes at the top might need some tuning back because of just the way things are. I don't think they want to touch the ones in the middle of the pack because they feel like that's where the most balance is. But at the same time, they also haven't made an effort to change how these other classes work in either AoE or single target. We haven't seen any notes or anything on them, so it's kind of interesting. I don't know how Blizzard does their thought process on, okay, we should buff this or we should nerf this and stuff like that. So I'm not sure how they do all that thought processing, but in my opinion, I think this Mythic Plus system has been fairly balanced towards all classes, aside from the absurd ones at the very top and the poor sub-rogues at the very bottom. Although I don't know if sub-rogue is really that bad or what, but the last time I checked, they were doing 300k, and the next class up, which was Enhancement Shaman, was doing 420k overall average in keys. So it's kind of interesting to see why isn't that class being touched and yet all the other ones are. But I mean, you got Shadow Priests up at I think they're up at 650k now, so it's kind of crazy. I'm not sure what is happening up there, but they're popping off. So it's nice to see. Shadow Priest is one of the most interesting classes in my opinion. I played it a little bit back in Legion when they had Surrender to Madness, which was cool. But speaking of Surrender to Madness, we had something similar, but not like quite as what's the word? Detrimental maybe of when you fail it with we had something like that with Elemental, which was going to be the build for season 3 and season 4 if it had stayed the same, which was even further beyond. And if you don't know what that talent does, it's a very interesting one that I was super excited to play, but then it got heavily nerfed, which was every time you use Elemental Blast or Earth Shock while in Ascendance form, it extends the Ascendance ability uh, by 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds based on what spell you did, right? And that was very interesting. And then you also had another one, which I don't know what it was called, but basically it took 30 seconds off of Ascendance and gave you 15% haste. And then if you put 2 talents into it, you got a minute off of Ascendance and 30% haste while in Ascendance, right? So those talents were very interesting to me, and I was very excited to try them out. But then Blizzard went ahead and completely gutted it, which was quite a shame because these talents have never seen the light of day. And that gets me thinking, why are we nerfing talents that have never been used, and you're not even making an effort to modify them to make them useful, right? And that's one of the things that concerns me when they're doing balancing and stuff like that, is they're not even taking into consideration certain things, which confuses me, right? I would think that, okay, this class, they haven't played these talents for 3 seasons in a row. What's wrong with them, and what can we do to fix them, right? That's what I would think they would want to do. They've done it with a few classes there. I think Ret Paladin's got an entire rework, and Demon Hunter's also got an entire rework. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, well, these talents haven't even been touched no matter what you do, and we're still not seeing anything with them. So I don't know. Those type of talents always interest me, right? Whereas if you play very well and play it good, you can maximize damage. But let's say you get unfortunate and you get stunned or something like that, you get a mechanic and you end up dropping it. Yeah, you're going to take a massive hit, but that is the double-edged sword that you're playing with, right? You want to do maximum damage, but at the risk of doing 0 damage if you either fail at it or, you know, you mess up a mechanic or something like that, right? So those talents always intrigue me very much because I love that kind of play style, that double-edged sword play style. It's always fun to me. And if Enhancement had something like that, whereas you spend Maelstrom to generate more Ascendance time, that would be freaking cool. But then Thorm's Invocation would kind of break that, right? Because they designed it that way. So it's things like that that I want to see brought back into the game, where you can either choose the safe option build that does, you know, the average DPS of the other one, but the double-edged sword DPS build, you can peak a lot higher, but you can also drop a lot lower. So I would really like to see something with that with shamans, because right now I do like the consistency of Elementalist. I really do. It's a very good build if you just want to consistently do DPS and you don't want to rely on RNG or anything like that. And obviously the RNG you're relying on in the Elementalist is getting a crit or not, right? Which is a bit less of a gamble when you're running Storm, where you're trying to get a Ascendance proc or Storm Strike procs and stuff like that. So those are things you have to remember. But I don't know. I really like the gambling effect of Enhancement. I do enjoy Storm. I do enjoy Elementalist. But not seeing certain things is very, very hard for me. Like, in my opinion, Ascendance is a big part of Enhancement, and this build isn't incorporating it at all. Now, we still have Feral Spirits, which I'm very glad for, but I feel like Primordial Wave might not be a good fit for Enhancement. I've been thinking that lately because, I don't know, I think it breaks it too much, right? When you have Primordial Wave, it wants to send a lightning bolt to every target with Flame Shock. Now, if Blizzard was to say, okay, we're going to uncap Flame Shock, well, that could cause some issues, especially with Primordial Wave. As you can see here, this is where I had to take a phone call, and I wasn't able to do both things at once. I was just trying to get it done and over with. But yeah, that's one thing that I feel might need a change. As I've said before, I'd really like to see Chain Harvest come back or something like that. Now, Primordial Wave can stay. I don't hate it. I just feel like if they're trying to balance Shaman, I feel like they can't quite do that with the way things are. Like, Primordial Wave may not be the entirety issue, but in my opinion, the issue is overflowing Maelstrom. Being able to spend 10 stacks of Maelstrom is putting a huge impact on our Maelstrom spenders, making them do absurd amount of damage, right? So our Maelstrom spenders, we used to have 5, and now we get to spend 10, which means we're getting 2 globals in 1 cast, right? And I believe the damage modifier might be even doing even more. But if you add a crit onto that, well, then you're dealing with even more and more damage, right? So, I think a big issue is the overflowing Maelstrom. Being able to spend 10 stacks is too much. Now, I don't hate the idea, but I just feel like our generators need a bit of love. Obviously, Lava Lash does a lot of damage in Elementalist, but we don't really use Storm Strike. And Ice Strike is there, but not quite there. You know, it does do things. Here I died again due to the phone. I always tell people, don't answer the phone when you're doing keys, and it's like, here I am doing this. But yeah, I don't know. I want to know your guys' thought on this, though. Like, what do you think would fix enhancement, or what do you think is the biggest issue with enhancement? Because in my opinion, it's the 10 stacks of Maelstrom that we're able to use and spend. I think that's a big issue. But again, I don't know what Blizzard's plan is for everything else. Right, because currently in War Within, not a lot's changed. We've just had hero talents added in, and they don't really look too terrible. I don't know how I didn't die there, but you know what? I'm gonna take the saving grace there because I have no idea. But yeah, with Totemic and Stormbringer hero talents, it seems like Stormbringer is really good. The Stormbringer hero talents are really good and laid out fairly well. The Totemic ones seem to be fighting each other, which is not good for shamans at all, right? So I don't know what their plan is. I think they need to do a lot of working out with Enhancement Shaman, because there's some major issues in the class, but it's also one of the more balanced, I guess. I don't know. We're the only class with 2 different builds that work, right? So that's one thing to say, okay, we have some decent balance, but at the same time, it's like we have some major issues too, because getting a rank 1 parse versus getting a rank 99 parse or something, or 98, relies specifically on critting with your Maelstrom spenders, because they hit so darn hard. Like, you can go from hitting a, 700 to 800 elemental blast to hitting a 1.4 mil or 1.6 mil LE blast, right? So those are big things to consider. But anyways, guys, that is it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed me rambling on. Let me know your thoughts on current enhance, or whether or not you're looking forward to War Within. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. Laters!